The man had a face more terrifying than a demon's. A single glance from him was enough to scare his classmates into jumping off buildings. Even teachers would instantly become extremely respectful in front of his burly figure. Yet, despite his imposing appearance, he was under strict control by his wife. All this happened because the world was on the brink of destruction. The god Odin sent his 9 daughters to the mortal world, where falling in love with a man would grant them supreme power. And it all started when several beautiful young women suddenly appeared at his home. Due to his frightening appearance and severe social anxiety, Takuma was unsurprisingly seen as a demon by others. Faced with these misunderstandings, Takuma was too indifferent to clarify. For him, nothing was more important than enjoying his books in solitude. However, he never expected that his peaceful home would be invaded by several girls. Caught off guard by this sudden intrusion, everyone was stunned. Takuma planned to leave everything behind, but Itsuo insisted on him staying. Unbeknownst to them, this affectionate scene sparked jealousy in Natsuki, who already liked Takuma. As they argued, Takuma tried to escape, but accidentally knocked Natsuki over. While he was being beaten up, 2 other girls rushed over. Before they could grasp the situation, Takuma had already retreated to his room. Now completely bewildered, he thought about his home being invaded by 9 women, who seemed like demons to him. Intent on focusing on his studies, Takuma considered calling the police. Just then, Futaba appeared. As the second oldest of the 9 sisters, she was adept at emotional appeals. If Takuma expelled them, he would face his father's reprimand and potentially end up on the streets. Hearing this, Takuma had no choice but to compromise. After all, who could refuse such adorable girls? Dinner time arrived quickly, and Takuma found himself dining with several beautiful girls. This sudden change made him feel uneasy, and he was puzzled as to why the girls showed no fear of him. Concerned about the impact on his studies, Takuma pondered how to properly ask the girls to leave, unaware that Natsuki had overheard his thoughts. Among the 9 sisters, Natsuki was the one he feared most, and Futaba noticed his discomfort. To alleviate the tension between them, Futaba organized a study session. During their time alone, Natsuki gathered the courage to ask if Takuma disliked being with her. As expected, she received an affirmative response, though Takuma was still oblivious to her feelings. Meanwhile, Itsuo was very displeased with Futaba's actions. Natsuki, now the strongest among them, needed to fall in love with Takuma to gain the power to defeat demons, as they were Valkyries. While attempting to foster a relationship between Takuma and Natsuki, Takuma, overly nervous, accidentally dropped his eraser. Natsuki, not the brightest, remembered her father's words that wearing glasses would make her smarter. Yet, she still struggled to understand the math problems. As she became frustrated, she sensed something and caught Takuma in the act. These unexpected events made Natsuki doubt whether Takuma was truly focused on his studies. This was Takuma's promise to his mother, to study hard and become a useful person. As the atmosphere reached a freezing point, Futaba timely arrived and asked the 2 to buy some tissues, insisting they hold hands. Takuma was confused when suddenly a broadcast announced frequent demon sightings nearby, causing Natsuki to immediately suspect Takuma. She couldn't understand why Takuma wouldn't defend himself against misunderstandings, as this behavior was unlike the hero who had once saved her life, who was so gallant at that time. Just then, as space tore apart, a huge creature appeared, the demon mentioned in the broadcast. As panic set in, the demon seemed to vanish, but it was actually trapped within a barrier. This demon was much stronger than the sisters had anticipated. Faced with this formidable demon, Takuma was solely focused on survival. Natsuki prepared to confront the demon alone, but unexpectedly, a building started to collapse towards them. As the dust settled, to Natsuki's surprise, the man who seemed ready to flee was the one who saved her. Although Takuma had always been alone, misunderstood by everyone, he possessed an incredibly kind heart. This reminded Natsuki of the first time Takuma had saved her. Indeed, he hadn't changed at all. With Natsuki's approval, the love system awakened. According to legend, there were 9 love Valkyries in mythology. The more these Valkyries were in love, the stronger they became, for love was their source of power. With countless blades falling, the demon was sliced into numerous pieces. The next day, the cute trio of sisters arrived at school as usual. To everyone's disbelief, Takuma had become their boyfriend. Takuma never expected that a simple kiss from a girl would grant her the strongest power in the world, leaving the other girls green with envy. In an attempt to gain this power, one girl decided to woo Takuma with her cooking, which she thought was unbeatable. However, her cooking turned Takuma into a spraying warrior. Meanwhile, as the day of exam results approached, it was no surprise that Takuma ranked first, though it was actually last. The reason was simple. Takuma's severe social anxiety made him too nervous to concentrate during exams when people were around. This frustrated Natsuki immensely. As expected, an unexpected incident occurred. While trying to scare Takuma away, Natsuki ended up feeling sad, knowing how hard Takuma worked, studying late every day, yet still not achieving the desired results. Just then, as the broadcast played and Takuma entered an empty classroom with a nervous heart, he was suddenly restrained by chains. The only person capable of such a power was Itsuo, one of the 9 sisters. Her purpose was simple: to date Takuma before a demon appeared to quickly enhance her own powers. However, beautiful women often have dual faces. Itsuo didn't genuinely like Takuma. She merely wanted to use him to elevate her own status to the strongest, thereby gaining her father's favor. After all, only a man as strong as her father was worthy of her trust in her eyes. While Itsuo was lost in her fantasies, she didn't realize that plans often cannot keep up with changes. Seeing that Takuma had not yet had lunch, Itsuo took out a carefully prepared bento to feed him. With the love system awakened, she thought her plan was about to succeed. But Takuma, too nervous, ended up throwing up. Despite this, Itsuo refused to give up. After numerous failures, she finally chose to give up. Just then, as the class bell rang, Takuma decided to make a run for it. Itsuo found it strange that despite her excellence, she couldn't influence Takuma at all. Her worries were soon noticed by Natsuki. Although Itsuo used to be a crybaby, she had changed significantly since coming to the mortal realm. Under Natsuki's provocation, just as Itsuo was about to seek out Takuma again, a demon unexpectedly appeared in the sky. Unlike the previous demon, this one needed to be restrained before it could be defeated, and Itsuo's chains were perfect for the job. However, Itsuo's level was too low, so Natsuki decided to fight the demon first to buy them some time. While Natsuki was struggling in a tough fight with the demon, Takuma found himself cornered in the gym. Itsuo claimed her actions were to save the world. Reluctantly, Takuma agreed, realizing that if the world were destroyed, studying would be pointless. As he approached her, Itsuo, in fear, slapped him at the last moment, claiming she saw a bug on his face. Despite her efforts to hide her fear, her tears gave her away. Seeing Itsuo's fear, Takuma was unsure what to do, but a childhood memory gave him an answer: the legendary head pat, a comforting gesture he had never seen before. This reminded Itsuo of how her father used to comfort her, the nostalgic touch strikingly similar. On the other side, even as Natsuki pierced the demon with her sword, it had no effect. Instead, she got caught by the demon due to her carelessness, and with her power draining, she was about to be devoured. At that critical moment, countless chains appeared, now wielded by Itsuo, whose level had increased. Itsuo used the chains to restrain the demon, and Natsuki seized the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow, effortlessly defeating the demon. After the battle, as Takuma and Mutsumi were on a date, Mutsumi, being an idol, was harassed by several thugs. What's it like to date a demon? This cute girl was not only unafraid, but even excited due to a bizarre incident at the age of 7 when she was frightened by a demon to the point of wetting herself. Since then, she developed a nearly perverse condition. She only has a crush on boys who look terrifying. Before this, Mutsumi, as an idol, was adored by many men, but she also had the lowest combat value among the 9 Valkyries. To alleviate this embarrassing situation, with the help of her sisters, she went on a date with Takuma today to level up. Unexpectedly, in front of Takuma's frightening figure, just the act of him eating a cake triggered Mutsumi's deep-seated attraction to the sinister. While she began to fantasize about Takuma, a familiar voice was heard. The speaker was their classmate, who boasted about having a popular idol as a classmate and didn't miss a chance to mock Takuma's demon-like appearance. After all, Takuma was notoriously terrifying in the area. However, the next second, he saw that familiar face. As expected, everyone suspected Takuma was the culprit. However, used to such misunderstandings, Takuma didn't react much, which saddened Mutsumi. To ensure they both had a pleasant day, Mutsumi promised to accompany him anywhere. They then visited a bookstore. For Takuma, who excelled only in his studies, nothing was more important than his grades. Unbeknownst to him, his serious demeanor once again touched Mutsumi's heart. Mutsumi, who was attacked by a demon as a child, had since lost confidence in facing difficulties, thinking she couldn't do anything on her own. It was only after becoming an idol and gaining fans' support that she gradually regained her confidence. She knew she couldn't always be protected and needed to be strong to protect her loved ones. This reminded Takuma of his helplessness when his mother was critically ill. What Mutsumi didn't understand was why she wasn't afraid of Takuma, despite his resemblance to a demon, and instead had already fallen for him. After Takuma finished shopping, he planned to return home, but Mutsumi earnestly asked him to stay longer. Unbeknownst to them, their every move was being watched by a man, a villain whose greatest desire was to devour a Valkyrie. Just as he was about to ambush Mutsumi, he sensed a threatening presence and, to be safe, summoned a demon to spread the word that the famous idol Mutsumi was there. This caused chaos in the mall. Mutsumi recognized it as a low-level demon that liked to gossip. If fans discovered her, it would cause a disaster, ruining their date. While Mutsumi was panicked, Takuma felt nauseous just thinking about the crowd gathering around them. Takuma grabbed Mutsumi's hand and prepared to flee. Holding hands with Takuma and being chased by countless fans unfolded a tense and thrilling scenario, making Mutsumi's heart flutter. However, during their escape, they accidentally entered a warehouse, just as their pursuers were closing in. In a moment of quick thinking, Takuma hid them in a cramped wardrobe. This confined space made Mutsumi's imagination run wild. The immediate priority was to escape without being detected. Mutsumi remembered her ability to transform into a winged form, which could break them out of this situation. But she needed Takuma's power because her own level was insufficient. Just as Mutsumi thought she might have to give her first kiss to enable the transformation, she realized the significant height difference between them presented a problem, so she decided on another method. Meanwhile, led by the demon, the fans hadn't found Mutsumi, but were convinced by a familiar silhouette. As they approached the wardrobe, Mutsumi's love system activated. A gust of wind swept through the crowd, and by the time they regained their senses, the wardrobe was empty. At that moment, Takuma appeared out of thin air, thanks to Mutsumi's powers. Although the date was a success, despite many unexpected events, Mutsumi worried whether she had truly made the day enjoyable for Takuma. As Takuma watched the setting sun, memories of his childhood flooded back. He often shopped here with his mother and watched the sunset on their way home. The scene before him was strikingly similar to those past evenings. There are some people who are inherently not suited for studying, yet always put in more effort than others. However, they invariably end up with a fear of failure. To boost Takuma's spirits, everyone decided to play a game of tag. To add excitement, the rule was that the ghost had to steal others' underwear. Unexpectedly, Futaba drew the red slip, terrifying everyone. Despite her seemingly clueless demeanor, she is incredibly powerful, even known as a queen in the divine realm. Misa could use her ability to monitor Futaba's movements with threads. Meanwhile, Itsuo found Takuma. Ever since Takuma had patted her head, Itsuo couldn't forget the feeling and was eager for more. Sensing something was amiss, Misa urged them to leave quickly, but it was too late. They were shocked to see Futaba with glasses, as her poor eyesight normally made her squint. When she wears glasses, it means she's serious. For Takuma's safety, Misa used her threads to send him away while she and Itsuo stayed behind to face the queen's judgment. Meanwhile, Takuma accidentally bumped into Yakumo, the most cunning of the sisters. She appears innocent and kind but speaks venomously, making Takuma feel the sting of failure. At this time, Natsuki suggested a plan. Considering Futaba's ability involves a castle from which she can summon countless spirit warriors and even conjure solid walls. They realized there was no chance of winning. The best option was to run, but they were already a step too late. While the battle raged, Takuma initially wanted to hide in the warehouse. However, within 3 seconds, Futaba defeated Natsuki and even captured her prize. As Futaba advanced and Takuma's virtue was at risk, a beautifully wrapped lucky bag appeared before him. It turned out that from the start of the game, everyone had a single goal: to present this lucky bag to him. Since Takuma studied late every day, the gift was meant to wish him success on his exams. Unknown to the others, Takuma had already fainted from fear. That evening, with the school festival approaching, everyone planned to use this opportunity to level up. Natsuki learned that her class was running a maid cafe, which excited her greatly. After all, her father had once said that a maid outfit is the battle uniform for women in the human world. Takuma was thought to be uninterested in the school festival, but the opposite was true. In fact, he was eagerly anticipating it because it meant he could study alone in a corner to his heart's content. Early the next morning, as the duty student, Natsuki was especially diligent in her work, excited for the upcoming school festival. However, she was troubled by the fact that Takuma hadn't looked at her since the previous night. This led her to wonder if she lacked charm, especially compared to her sister's figures. Then, a classmate approached Natsuki for help. The student council needed to inspect the class programs, but the girl assigned to this task was absent, so Natsuki had to fill in. Dressed in a maid outfit, Natsuki looked exceptionally cute. Meanwhile, a host named Garm arrived, who was actually a minion of an evil god. Before Natsuki could notice anything unusual, the inspection began. As expected, Takuma was chosen to be served. Facing a nervous Takuma, sweating profusely, Natsuki decided to use this opportunity to show her cuteness and strike everyone's hearts. However, Takuma remained unimpressed. Natsuki then switched to Plan B. A peculiar sundae was placed in front of Takuma, but it seemed to lack some decoration. As Natsuki prepared to add some whipped cream, she accidentally splashed it all over her face. This scene angered everyone present. At that moment, Garm pulled a stone from his bag, and several humanoid demons appeared in the classroom. Untransformed and unaware of the demon's origin, Natsuki was captured by them. As she cried out Takuma's name, the usually timid Takuma's aura flared up. With a few punches and kicks, he quickly dispatched the demons. Unbeknownst to him, this act deepened Natsuki's romantic feelings. At this time, Garm from the evil god's faction also learned about the Valkyries' strength in their human state. As the sun set, while Natsuki and Takuma were walking home together, Natsuki complained that Takuma only cared about studying and did not appreciate others' appearances. Unbeknownst to her, Takuma actually found Natsuki to be the cutest. Hearing this, Natsuki blushed, and, to hide her embarrassment from Takuma, she hurriedly quickened her pace. Natsuki never expected that just after acquiring the power of the Holy Sword, she would immediately face the Demon King. The enemy not only possessed an impenetrable shell, but also had the ability to reflect any physical attack. However, this could not deter the invincible Natsuki, especially since she was protecting her most important family. Meanwhile, with the school festival approaching, Natsuki's class was preparing a maid cafe. A dance party was scheduled for the evening, and her sisters were ready to give Natsuki the spotlight. However, Takuma was reluctant because of his notorious demon nickname. He feared for his life if seen dancing with the beautiful Natsuki, which left her greatly disappointed, and she walked away. After some advice from her sisters, even the clueless Takuma could not miss Natsuki's feelings for him, especially since she had personally made the lucky bag for him. Just then, Garm suddenly stopped Takuma. After some small talk and confirming that Takuma was alone, Garm decided to drop his disguise. At this moment, Itsuo was still searching for Takuma with Natsuki, and they both felt something was amiss. As a huge demon appeared, the students around were infected and turned into half-demons. Whenever demons appeared, the protective barrier given to Takuma by Odin would activate. As long as Takuma was alive, the barrier would not disappear. The urgent task now was to figure out how to defeat the demon. Under Misa's careful planning, Natsuki was tasked with handling the half-demons outside the barrier, while the others tried to stop the demons inside it. Without Takuma, their untransformed abilities were significantly weakened, and they soon fell prey to the demons. Meanwhile, the mastermind behind all this, without lifting a finger and while enjoying a hamburger, was thrilled to witness the Valkyries' defeat. He had originally planned to invite Takuma for dinner, but by that time, Takuma was barely clinging to life. Seeing Takuma silent, Garm began to beat him mercilessly. As his consciousness faded, Takuma thought he was dying. His life flashed before his eyes. He remembered that after receiving the lucky bag, feeling guilty for always holding everyone back, he had decided to return it to Natsuki. Takuma thought of himself as useless beyond his academic abilities. However, Natsuki didn't see him as worthless. Every time she was in danger, Takuma would risk everything to protect her. Realizing someone was waiting for him, Takuma finally overcame his fear. But as a human, how could he possibly defeat a demon? Just then, Futaba arrived in time. She had anticipated the demon attack and had marked everyone beforehand. She put on her glasses, and before Garm could react, a wall rose up, catching him off guard. This seemingly clueless girl became incredibly powerful just by wearing glasses. Takuma tried to seize the opportunity to escape, but the next second, a claw pierced through him. This was a curse Garm had placed on Takuma. If Takuma moved more than a meter away from Garm, his body would be torn apart by claws. Unexpectedly, his torn body healed instantly, thanks to the lucky bag he carried, which contained a drop of the world tree's tear, a precious substance from the divine realm that only recognizes those with true conviction. At that moment, Takuma's only conviction was to be by Natsuki's side. A moment ago, Takuma was deemed useless, but now he had forgotten his fear of death. As a child, because everyone was afraid of him, he had no friends. However, he promised his mother that if he ever met someone who wasn't afraid of him and could be his friend, he would do everything to protect her, even if it meant sacrificing his life. At that moment, a girl wielding a long spear appeared. She was Ichika, making her first appearance, and also the strongest of the 9 sisters. She cleared a path for Takuma, allowing him to find Natsuki. As the saying goes, blonde girls tend to be tsundere. One second she was scolding Takuma, the next she threw herself into his arms. The immediate priority was to transform and defeat the demon. But first, there was an important task to complete, cleaning the remaining dirt off their bodies, which also triggers the romance system. The plot here is exciting, but I'll keep it appropriate for the review. Just as the sisters were about to be killed by the demon, Natsuki arrived just in time. Now at level 23, she could freely control the holy sword to attack her enemies. This time, their opponent, known for his gluttony, could not only rebound all physical attacks, but also swallow opponents' weapons to convert their power for his own use. However, this was no challenge for the invincible Natsuki. With her sword drawn rapidly in an almost invisible yai strike, she quickly finished off the demon. Meanwhile, even in her normal state, Futaba was not hindered from thrashing the enemy. Garm, in a bid to save his life, shot a hidden weapon at Futaba and then fled. Soon, as the school festival reached its final stage, among the cheers of everyone, Mutsumi won the beauty contest. Before the contest, the 3 compelled participants had agreed that the winner would get to dance with Takuma at the evening party. Although Natsuki did not win, Mutsumi gave her the opportunity, knowing that Takuma also wanted to use it to seek Natsuki's forgiveness. Natsuki never expected that a simple kiss on Takuma would result in nothing happening. Unbeknownst to her, this scene was fully witnessed by her sisters. Incredibly, where a kiss had previously granted transformation powers, nothing occurred this time. Just recently, they had received a gift from their father in the divine realm, including a decree that detailed the timing of demon appearances. Before planning their strategy, Futaba decided to have Natsuki transform into her battle state. However, when she tried, nothing happened. Fortunately, Futaba had anticipated this and had Kururi prepare a tablet for Takuma, detailing everyone's specific information. Surprisingly, Natsuki's value in the AP column was 0. AP, representing divine power, is heavily consumed by Valkyries either in battle or when injured. Excessive consumption can lead to a temporary loss of transformation power. Considering this, after careful thought, only Mutsumi and Yakumo were left capable of combat. So, while Mutsumi was busy shooting a commercial, Yakumo and Takuma went on a date to boost levels. The task for the date was to hold hands for an hour, which, for Takuma, was more torturous than losing his life. Moreover, although Yakumo looked cute, she was quite sharp-tongued. The scene before her worried Itsuo, but Natsuki remained unusually calm. Previously, Takuma had approached Natsuki to learn about Yakumo because it seemed she was quite averse to him. Natsuki revealed that Yakumo had unusually sensitive hearing, where even slight sounds were amplified immensely, which explained her constant use of noise-canceling headphones. Takuma's nervousness and fast heartbeat felt like an earthquake to Yakumo, even with prior knowledge about Yakumo. As Takuma tried to control his heartbeat, a familiar voice interrupted them, his classmate. At that moment, as their hands parted, their dating task failed. While Takuma was unsure what to do next, Yakumo gave him a disdainful look, having never seen a man as feeble as him. Meanwhile, after a grueling photo shoot, Mutsumi rewarded herself by pulling out a photo of Takuma, just as she was about to engage in some mischief but nearly got caught. A new romantic task was triggered. Takuma's next assignment was to take glamour shots of Mutsumi. However, as expected, trouble arose during the shoot. Seeking more excitement, Yakumo suddenly produced an ice cream, leaving Takuma dumbfounded. At the same time, in a nearby park, a demon wielding a long sword appeared. To avoid harming bystanders, Icha and Futaba arrived just in time, but they were still in their normal state, and could only try to buy time for their transformation. While Mutsumi was overwhelmed, Yakumo quickly claimed Takuma's lips for herself. As Icha and another were battling the demon, a huge sphere fell, expanding into a barrier. Mutsumi and Yakumo had completed their transformation. When the demon swung its sword, they chose not to fight, but instead used Mutsumi's wings to escape into the sky. Their strategy was simple. Like the Valkyries, the demon's appearance and battle actions consumed magical power. They planned to hide and wait for the demon's power to drain away until it vanished. However, reality proved harsh. As the demon drew its sword, Yakumo timely activated her time-slowing ability, allowing Mutsumi to narrowly escape. Takuma then discovered through his tablet that the demon's magical power had hardly decreased, while their divine power was nearly depleted. Continuing this way would be perilous. Just then, Yakumo seemed to hear something, and as expected, the demon found them again. They thought of fleeing again, but an arrow from nowhere struck the demon, causing a massive explosion that completely drained their divine power. Yet the demon remained unscathed. Takuma remembered a conversation with Futaba from a few days ago. She had told him that he harbored a healing tree within him that could heal the Valkyries, provided Takuma held a firm belief. At that moment, his agitated heartbeat calmed, and as the demon swung fiercely, Takuma dodged easily amidst the girl's screams and countered with a punch to the demon. The next second, a book appeared in Takuma's hands, and the divine power of the two Valkyries gradually recovered. With Yakumo's buffs stacking, Mutsumi successfully defeated the demon. Although Natsuki outwardly deemed Takuma's bravery during the battle as barely satisfactory, she was actually deeply charmed by him. When Yakumo returned, she noticed the green tea in Takuma's hand, realizing that Takuma had always been devoted to someone else. Disappointed, she reverted to her sharp-tongued self. Meanwhile, as a member of the evil god faction, Ular knew that even his own intervention was unlikely to turn the tide. Reluctantly, he had no choice but to call upon the queen. This was the girl's first time on a train, but it unexpectedly turned into her nightmare. As she prepared to strike, she never expected to face her own sister. Natsuki had always wondered why, despite growing up together, only her own figure had not developed as she had hoped, which made her envious. However, this was all part of a mission. Takuma's task was to rescue Itsuo from a female molester. As the train arrived and the crowd surged, Takuma felt extremely uncomfortable. In the chaos, when he finally found the two and tackled the molester, he completed his task, but the situation turned incredibly awkward. On their way back, with mock exams approaching, Takuma bought a lot of study materials. Although he knew he wasn't one to lecture others, Natsuki's intelligence genuinely worried him. She wasn't just ordinarily foolish. She firmly believed in the rumor that wearing glasses would make her smarter. When Natsuki sneezed, the usually rigid Takuma suddenly grabbed her hand. Normally, a boy would offer his jacket in such a situation. Despite lacking in romantic knowledge, this gesture was enough to make any romantically inclined girl swoon. However, in the next second, Natsuki pushed Takuma away. Her instincts warned her of a very dangerous aura approaching. A long spear suddenly thrust toward them. Though Natsuki managed to counterattack in time, after just a few exchanges, her hands went numb. To her shock, her opponent turned out to be Ichika. That evening, due to Takuma's ineffective actions in battle, Ichika scolded him harshly. It was Takuma's first time meeting Ichika, and while he greeted her, it only infuriated her further. Unbeknownst to him, Ichika had been secretly protecting Takuma and had witnessed her sisters falling into danger. As someone extremely protective of her sisters, one moment she was threatening Takuma with force, and the next, upon seeing her sisters arrive, her attitude did a complete 360-degree turn. Seeing this, Takuma immediately tried to flee, but Ichika gave him no chance. Her purpose for returning was to temporarily take over Natsuki's role as the attacker. However, since she was only at level 1, Futaba instructed them to go on a date to level up, with the task being to scrub each other's backs. Before starting, under Ichika's coercion, Takuma had no choice but to reveal his true feelings. Compared to love, he felt more indebted to the girls, as he was always dragging them down. But it is known that romance is the source of Valkyrie's strength. If he couldn't fulfill this aspect, someone could eventually lose their life because of it. Just then, Natsuki and Yakumo arrived. Futaba, wanting to prevent any accidents, had sent them to supervise, ensuring that Takuma ended up taking a bath with the three sisters. At the same time, Kururi was puzzled about whether Ichika was as powerful as rumored. Mutsumi revealed that Ichika was a sorceress, and like her predecessors, she possessed great power, but at the cost of a sensitive constitution. Ichika's skin was very sensitive, which was the real reason Natsuki and another were assigned to supervise her. After overcoming many difficulties, Ichika successfully transformed, but in fact, she had fainted the moment Takuma touched her. Elsewhere, a seemingly adorable little boy, loved by everyone, narrowly escaped being devoured by a demon right after shopping. Fortunately, the boy acted quickly, striking the demon's forehead with an arrow. Garm, a member of the evil god cult, had not eaten for days as punishment for failing his last mission. Today, due to the imminent arrival of the demon princess, the two need to make some preparations. Accompanied by a familiar voice, a girl named Scold appears behind them, along with a maid. They are both top warriors of the cult of the evil gods. Their sole purpose is to defeat the Valkyries and obtain the Tree of Healing within Takuma. Elsewhere, Futaba convened a family meeting to discuss how to handle the demon princess Scold, who can summon demons indefinitely as long as she has magical power. Even a combined effort of the 9 sisters might not suffice to defeat her. While they strategized, Natsuki was distracted by concerns about Takuma. Could he be secretly buying adult magazines? The more she thought about it, the more plausible it seemed that her boyfriend was resorting to magazines to quench his thirst, which made her feel inadequate and increasingly angry. She accidentally drank her sister's honey wine, causing a commotion inside the house. When Takuma instinctively opened the door to check, Natsuki suddenly pounced on him, sticking to him and spouting nonsense as part of her playful antics. This made Takuma's heartbeat race. Since the meeting was still ongoing, Futaba asked Takuma to look after Natsuki. Back in the bedroom, Takuma planned to get Natsuki to sleep early, but found her delirious. Natsuki demanded Takuma help her undress, threatening not to sleep otherwise. Even after undressing, she was still unsatisfied and forcefully pushed Takuma down. However, being a gentleman, Takuma did not want to take advantage of her inebriated state and knocked her away with a punch, which gradually brought her back to her senses. Remembering her actions, Natsuki wished she could just disappear. Suddenly, a large hand slowly reached out. Natsuki thought she was about to experience her first time, but his target was actually a dating magazine. This was the book Takuma had secretly bought because he did not understand romance and wanted to improve his knowledge to be worthy as an Einherjar. Relieved, Natsuki apologized for her behavior. Just as she mustered the courage to confess her feelings, Takuma interrupted her, showing that he was still quite oblivious. On this day, the demon princess Scold issued a challenge to the Valkyries. After recharging her magic, Futaba successfully maximized her attributes. Now, she must face Scold alone. However, she is actually the weakest among the 9 sisters, born with a frail soul and very little magical power. While she possesses the ability to summon castles, She can only conjure the outer walls of the capital. Despite her limitations, Futaba never gave up on becoming stronger. She trained her body rigorously and developed fearsome combat skills to fight demons. But even her formidable fists are not enough against multiple foes, and Scold, being level 52, did not take her seriously and mocked her lack of power. Futaba, undeterred, quickly broke through Scold's defenses with a few sharp words. Then, a horde of demons attacked her. Futaba fought defensively, striking critical hits with each attack. As the battle raged on, her strength rapidly depleted. Thankfully, Futaba's desperate fighting allowed Ichika and Takuma to sneak behind enemy lines. Now was a critical moment. Ichika's transformation could only last a second, so timing their attack was crucial. However, Takuma sensed something was off. The number of demon eggs nearby seemed to have decreased. Ichika hurriedly used her detection ability, but found no issues. As time passed, Futaba was repeatedly thrown back by the demons. Ichika, seeing this, felt helpless as she needed to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Eventually, due to a mistake, Futaba was captured by the demons. Other demons surged towards the barrier, causing the other sisters great anxiety. Scold, conserving her energy on the sidelines, knew that continuing to drain Futaba would lead to certain death. So, Futaba provoked her with biting remarks, pushing Scold to her limit. Scold, unable to tolerate any more, hatched all 4 surrounding eggs. This was the moment the Valkyries were waiting for. Although only a demigod, the spear could shatter anything in an instant. This was Ichika's true power. But fighting from level 1 against level 52 was still too much of a stretch. However, they could kill her maid, Roskva. Suddenly, Takuma sensed an impending danger and leapt to protect Ichika. It turned out Roskva had already fallen to demonic status, with the last egg hidden inside her. Defeating a high-level demon on guard in 1 second was impossible. The scales of victory tipped entirely in favor of the demons. Explosions rocked the city as Takuma carried Ichika, fleeing to a park for a brief respite. Despite her efforts, Ichika, drained of magical power, struggled with every movement. Seeing this, Ichika insisted Takuma return to help her sisters. Einherjar are the heart of Valkyries. She couldn't let Takuma die here. These were clearly her last words. Without Ichika, even if the others barely survived, no one would truly be happy. Then, they frantically replenished their magic. Even if discovered by enemies, even if blasted away, their hands remained clasped together. He shielded Ichika with his body as they continued to replenish their magic in a grove until the area was bombed to ruins. Scold believed they were surely dead, but things did not go as she wished. While Takuma gained the approval of the 9 Valkyries, he successfully awakened his Einherjar form. Ichika broke through the magical barrier with just one move. Scold, in panic, realized that Ichika's energy was increasing instead of decreasing. This support from Takuma is absurdly strong. She decided to target him first, casting spells to bombard Takuma. However, Ichika did not return to assist Takuma, and she offered no explanation for this. Scold hatched a plan. If the Einherjar died, the Valkyries would be less of a threat. The next second, a barrage of demonic cannons aimed at Takuma. Scold was determined to win. Yet Ichika remained unfazed. It turned out Takuma had broken through the Einherjar's limits. The appearance of a red thread between their fingers signified that the goddess of true love had transcended divinity. The next second, a brilliant light soared into the sky as Natsuki became the first Valkyrie to break through to the 3rd tier, adding impressive combat power. Scold became frantic, thinking about recalling her demons for defense, but they were all held back by Futaba. Her shield could not withstand Ichika. Out of options, Scold released her ultimate attack, plunging the world into a blood-red hue. Futaba quickly maximized her defense while Natsuki ordered Takuma to stay behind her and not come out. Amid a series of complex chants, Scold and Roskva merged into one egg. When they hatched, they had fused into one entity, a form of an ancient evil god whose power rivaled that of a chief deity. Unexpectedly, Scold had hidden such strength. Natsuki led the charge with several giant swords, striking from behind the evil god, but she couldn't break through its defense. Ichika, expected to make a difference, was easily defeated by the evil god. The demon's power far exceeded the current limits of the Valkyries. The evil god's casual release of skills shattered the city walls. Shino could no longer hold on, and her barrier broke. The Valkyries fell, exhausted and defeated, leaving only Takuma standing while bystanders thought they were filming a movie. Next, the demon race drained the energy of humans and released their ultimate attack. Facing this powerful strike, Takuma stepped forward. With the power of his soul, he forcibly dissolved the major attack. Seizing this hard-earned opportunity, everyone rallied for a counterattack. After a series of combined moves, they finally repelled the demon princess. However, their base had been invaded. Ular seized the world tree, and since Garm could not break through Misa's thread defense, he attacked Misa directly. After the battle, Futaba was extremely weak and had sustained serious injuries. However, Misa's situation was worse. Although Takuma repaired her physical body, Misa's soul was no longer inside it and seemed to have crossed to the other side, which meant actual death. Yet Takuma forcefully intervened, chasing her soul from the mortal realm to the beyond. He carried Misa back, and although every step felt like 1,000 pounds, he persevered for the sake of his loved one. The journey was perilous, and stopping could mean being consumed by the powers of the beyond. Fortunately, Natsuki's voice echoed in his ears, giving him the strength to successfully bring Misa back. The sisters all cried tears of joy, but also restored their usual liveliness. To prepare for future fierce battles, they had to call upon Shino, currently the strongest among them. After the great battle came the end-of-term exams. Takuma's social anxiety had lessened significantly, allowing him to function in the exam room. Unexpectedly, just by completing the exam paper, he easily topped the entire school. The sisters consecutively sent their blessings. It turned out the ancient saying was true. Where there's a will, there's a way. Your efforts will never be in vain. Thus, the communal life of 10 continued.